For me, it's that the spiritual path, and this happened in my college years.
McNair Ezzard of Asheville, North Carolina.
The spiritual path became something I was really interested in. And in fact, I decided that I wanted the spiritual path to be not only my vocation, but my avocation.
And as a consequence, McNair's interest in spiritual pursuit has never left him.
Fact that I know life doesn't stand still. I didn't know how to define it at the time, so I chose seminary as a way to have both of those paths meet for me. It's who I am, it's my life.
A spiritual life that continues to grow in many directions.
Fact that I know life doesn't stand still. If I'm feeling the same way or I'm stuck in a belief system, I'm not working with life. It's not moving me forward because beliefs are just, Ramana Maharshi, I think would say these are just thought forms that people have. But you need to go beyond the mental, beyond the thought.
And what takes you beyond beliefs and thoughts? Experiences.
But I think it's just the experience of being more in touch with who I am as the self. I think the inner experiences just propel me forward. Working towards having those experiences helps me to see that these divisions that we set up in the human mind, like between denomination or between religions, they're all just superficial and man-made.
These days, McNair counts among his teachers Sri Satya Sai Baba, Jesus, of course, and Ramana Maharshi.
Ramana Maharshi's teachings it's kind of like it brings it all home to me. He talks about being outer directed to the second and third person, meaning our thoughts or experiences we have with the five senses, when what we need to be focused on is the first person, which is the self. And everything I've studied, when I think back about it, has been leading me in that direction.
And welcome to Souljourns. This interview was recorded on February 11th, 2023 in Asheville, North Carolina and Coronado, California. On Souljourns today, we're happy to welcome McNair Ezzard from Asheville, North Carolina, and I'm extremely pleased that he's agreed to join us today. Welcome to Souljourns.
Thank you, Ted. It's good to be here.
I want to say that one of the things that puts us together more than anything is you have a discernible spiritual path, which I'm interested in learning about. And I want to begin by asking you, McNair, how you were raised in a family of strong spiritual belief, strong religion, or none whatsoever.
Well, no, I grew up and it's probably family tradition. I grew up in plain old Methodist church in Eastern North Carolina. My parents, it was not a fundamentalist type church, but just a kind of run-of-the-mill Protestant Methodist church. And that's, of course, I had my days when I went off to college where I wandered away, like so many people do once they break free of the parents' yoke.
You had some core beliefs that must have been significant or fairly strong, because it led you, before you became a full-fledged credentialed adult, into divinity school. And if I remember correctly, you got a master's of divinity degree under your belt.
I did. I went to I first applied and attended Duke Divinity School in Durham, North Carolina, but after a semester, I had longed to go west to the mountains, to the Rockies. So I transferred to Iliff School of Theology in Denver. I think it was the year 1981 or 82 that I graduated with a Master's of Divinity degree there.
Did you have a chance to use it in a productive way?
Well, yeah, I worked, when I first got out of seminary, I worked as director of pastoral care at a 50-bed inpatient hospice in Denver. It was a freestanding hospice. And back then, most of the hospices were either home care. So we were kind of an anomaly at being a freestanding facility. I worked there for 4 years and then moved over to nursing home administration, which I did for many years. And all throughout that time, I'm also ordained in the Methodist Church.
I want to ask you a question that may or may not resonate with you. I had a number of years where I was a hospice volunteer. Don't read too much into that. I worked one-on-one with a person 1 hour a week, but I did it for a long time, and I learned tremendously about others, but mostly about myself and how I might want to know even more about myself based on the experiences I had. Did that ever come close to being a thought or an understanding in your own mind?
Oh, Ted, there's for me, there was nothing like that experience. There's something about being with the dying that kind of brings up all those questions about what is life worth? What's it, what are we doing here? You know, because you see everything disappear from people's lives and only the bare essentials are left. And it really set me on a path to I won't say realization, but self-discovery and self-searching about what was important in life. And it was, and I still do a lot of that work today with people who are in palliative care or dying. So yeah, it was very much a part of my spiritual path.
And on your spiritual path, this is what I find exceedingly interesting, and you can say as much or as little as you want to about it. I found that you obviously moved from a Christian bedrock foundation of beliefs. Did you find that difficult to do? I just want to say up front that I know you've got interest far afield from mainstream Christianity and Ramana Maharshi's teachings, Sai Baba's teachings, and probably countless others' teachings.
It's kind of been a razor-edged path. I've considered my approach to spirituality very eclectic. Even when I was in seminary, I was reading, you know, other religions, Buddhism, Hinduism, and it just added so much to my spiritual paths. But in certain ways, yeah, it's kind of, like I said, been traveling the razor-edged path with that. But you're right, my interests are far afield, and I think it only enhances whatever service or ministry I might be involved in, actually. To me, that's why we're here on this planet in the first place, is to grow more fully into self-awareness, as Ramana Maharshi would say, or awareness of ourselves as souls, as divine beings. You can define it in a lot of different ways. And that doesn't just happen by itself. It takes discipline, and it takes effort to study and to put into practice what you study. For me, it's that the spiritual path, and this happened in my college years at Chapel Hill, where I got my undergraduate degree. The spiritual path became something I was really interested in. And in fact, when I was going to go to graduate school in film at the University of Georgia, but I'd started meditating, reading. My first book kind of opened a door for me, was Edgar Cayce's biography, There's a River. And I decided that I wanted the spiritual path to be not only my vocation, but my avocation. I didn't know how to define it at the time, so I chose seminary because I didn't know what was out there to do. So I chose seminary as a way to have both of those paths meet for me. So yeah, it's an integral, it's who I am, it's my life. And if I don't, like if I go a few days without meditating, which I try not to do, it's like something is missing. So it's such a part of me that I keep up the practice all the time. Even when I'm not sitting quietly meditating, I'm trying to be in that awareness, that state of awareness, mindfulness, whatever you want to call it.
That seems to be the number one question asked of us by whatever I might refer to as the pointers, the people who show me the way all through my years, including where I am presently in my old age. And I'm grateful that there are people out there who don't browbeat you with lessons to learn as much as they point you. Ted, you're there, go like that. And if you want to, or choose to go that way. And you seem to do that in divinity school. And I wanted to ask you if you felt you were the Lone Ranger studying about Jesus Christ as much as you humanly could take in, and also Buddhism and Hinduism and other disciplines.
Well, I was fortunate in a way because Iliff School of Theology in Denver was progressive school, and the main instructors I had encouraged me to be open-minded and to pursue study in things that would add to who I was developing to see myself as a Protestant minister. So I was very fortunate in that way. I know there's a lot of seminaries out there that aren't that way. You know, they're very conservative and traditional. So I was blessed in that way to go to Iliff.
You know, and when I was raised in the Catholic Church, I heard it right from the lips of the priests that there's only one way, there's only one philosophy, there's only one religion that gets you there. And of course, that's Catholicism, as it was taught back in the 50s. So you were leaning outside of your own interest field, and I understand why, to broaden your horizon.
But now it's like interfaith dialogue,
Mhm.
and I don't just mean between different Protestant sects, but between different religions. It's the go-to word in many circles. So it's like it's come into its own.
I'm curious to know how, for the duration of your time solidly on the path of Christianity, and presumably you're there still, I don't know, it doesn't matter to me, that you found the interest to move into the realm of active experiencing who Sai Baba is or was, Ramana Maharshi is or was. How did that transition occur in your life when you finally found yourself moving out of the boundaries of Christianity?
It's almost like maybe I was born with it. Maybe I was tending that way in a previous lifetime. I don't know, but it seemed to fit. I mentioned earlier about Edgar Casey's biography, There Is a River. And that was the first time I had really thought about reincarnation, because he talks about reincarnation in there. And when I read that, it's like so much of what I grew up learning about the Bible, it all made so much more sense than the way I was taught. So that kind of opened the door, and I tried to not fight it after that. You know, if something came into my life, or if I asked for guidance on something, I tried to say yes to it, you know, but also using my discrimination and discernment, because I didn't want to travel too far down paths that weren't going to be useful for me. But it just seemed like an innate part of who I was to be able to open to that.
I'd like to ask you a thumbnail sketch, if you would, of what you've learned from some of the places you've been, some of the camps you've dipped your big toe into to see what it's like.
I guess it was Edgar Casey, and then you mentioned that you had studied Course in Miracles, which I wasn't disciplined enough to stay with it for as long as you did, but I studied it for a few years in the early 80s. And then I came across a book written by British author Benjamin Creme called The Reappearance of the Christ. And that really influenced my idea about that these great teachers always come throughout human history to kind of show humanity the next step forward. I mean, we had it with ones like the Buddha, Muhammad, Jesus 2,000 years ago, and various lesser and greater teachers throughout human history. And he was saying that, and he's deceased now, that there is in the world now a great world teacher who hasn't come out into the open, who is here to inspire humanity, not to start a new religion, but to inspire humanity to find out who they are, number one, to teach us who we are, and number two, to inspire us to create a better world so that there's not the disparities between the haves and the have-nots, so the world is more equitable and balanced. So that was a big influence on my life. And of course, reading Creme's material, I found out about Sai Baba and started reading Sai Baba's teachings. In fact, Deb and I went to India about 10 years ago. It was, I think, a year before Sai Baba went into Mahasamadhi.
Mm-hmm.
And those were very influential on me. And then I also found out about Ramana Maharshi years ago, but it wasn't until the past couple of years that I've really felt guided and pulled in that direction to practice his teachings on self-inquiry. I was asking Sai Baba one day, I said, I need something that's going to help me move past where I'm at in my meditations, because I was feeling stuck. And then I saw Sanjay Mahalingam on television, on YouTube, and on your channel, SOULJOURNS. He was talking about Sai Baba, but he was also talking about self-inquiry. Who am I? So it's like something I asked, and something was given to me on a plate, and that's been a big part of my life in the past few years.
And I find more and more people who are Sai Baba devotees from decades ago going farther along in their journey, which is not frowned upon and never was by Sai Baba. If anything, he encouraged people to look within without end and to find out the truth of who they are.
Well, he said one time, and this was from Sanjay's talk I watched, and maybe it was even on your interview with him, said the most important thing that anyone can ever ask is, who am I? find out who you are.
Right, which was a seminal question as posed by Ramana Maharshi. How did you learn to do that? By finding something of value that continued your efforts to look within more so.
I guess I would have to say it's not an intellectual experience, but kind of an inner, non-intellectual, non-mental experience, but it's just something that happens as a person travels the path. You start to have these experiences and understandings that I couldn't really explain them to people, or I wouldn't want to try and get people to see it my way. But it's when you have these inner experiences, they become your experience, and they are confirmation in a way of what I've been reading and understanding intellectually is now in the heart. And that's where things become real for me.
My wife Jody and I talk about that very thing over and over again. And it helps me prepare to answer questions from naysayers who say, Ted, the great scriptures or the great books or the great authors tell you plainly how to follow your intellectual understanding of who you are and what you are. But none of that, in my mind, compares to the actual experiences gleaned along the way. Would you mind sharing, and this is a personal question you don't have to answer, some of the experiences that you wouldn't mind describing, how it bolstered your belief in who you are?
Well, one such experience, gosh, I think it was probably summer of 1981. I went to a lecture in Los Angeles. I was living in Colorado at the time, and a couple of friends and I went to Los Angeles, and it was an all-day event. The morning was the Hunger Project was giving a presentation about world hunger and poverty and such. And in the afternoon, the person I mentioned, Benjamin Krem, was lecturing about his message. And I was sitting in the audience, probably, he was up on the stage, probably 4 or 5 rows back. And there's always a meditation to start before his talk. And he says that he would be, what's the best word? It's not channeling, but overshadowed by this energy from the world teacher. And he would send out a blessing for the audience. So I was just sitting, and I had never experienced anything like that. And I was sitting in the audience with my eyes closed. And all of a sudden, I felt this tremendous, it was like, I guess a visualization would be like a rose that you see on film that opens slowly. And I felt this tremendous surge of love and stuff in my heart. And I opened my eyes, and the whole room had this kind of fine, misty kind of atmosphere about it. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. I never experienced anything like that before. So that was very telling for me in terms of, maybe I didn't know a lot about the story at that time, but maybe what he's saying, maybe there's something to this, because I'm having an inner reaction to what is happening. And then, of course, I had experiences about Sai Baba. And when I first found out about Sai Baba, I said to him, are you my guru? You know, I wanted to, because I was kind of at that stage where I wanted a guru to follow. I wanted somebody to follow. And I never got any indication. I mean, I loved watching the videos about him and reading the books, recordings of his talks.
So what keeps you going? What keeps you propelled to move forward, not to and through your beliefs of decades ago, but continually into new beliefs?
I guess it would be more the fact that I know life doesn't stand still. And if I'm feeling the same way I did about something, or I'm stuck in a belief system, that life is not, I'm not working with life. It's not moving me forward, because beliefs are just, Ramana Maharshi, I think, would say these are just thought forms that people have. But you need to go beyond the mental, beyond the thought. But I think it's just the experience of being more in touch with who I am as the self, although I'm, like Michael James, I think, said on your show, he said, I'm just an aspirant. Well, I'm just an aspirant. I'm nobody, really. But I think the inner experiences just propel me forward, and more seeing that from that non-dualistic attitude, working towards having those experiences helps me to see that these divisions that we set up in the human mind, like between denomination and between religions, they're all just superficial and man-made, if you would, that the real spiritual thing, that's all one. And I think those kind of hints that I get in my own practice kind of help propel me forward. And I ask for guidance too, about, well, I need something that's going to help me pass this impasse right now. And usually something will come, a teaching or a teacher, or watching one of your videos on Souljourns, something like that will open a door for me.
And then you might get to the place where I've landed a few times in my life with Ramana's teachings, in that his message is, you already know everything you need to know. You already are the highest self. You already are fully Atma. And it's gotten to the point where I know of people, including one sitting here, who turns to self for the guidance. Does that make any sense to you?
Mm. Yeah, it does. I mean, I tend to still be outward looking, which isn't, it just shows me I haven't absorbed the teachings fully. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean, but I'm not there yet, but I strive to be. Yeah.
Well, we've given short shrift a little bit to Ramana Maharshi's teachings, and I know they play a vital role in your life today. And we're starting to draw close to the end of our allotted time here. Do you want to say something about his teachings that strike you as being additionally useful to all the other teachings that you've been exposed to?
Well, his teachings don't make me question everything that's gone before, but his teachings help me to see the underlying truth in the different things that I've studied. And it helped, he talks about, well, I'm reading one of Michael James's book that I guess he edited from Sadhu Om, The Light on the Path of Ramana Maharshi, or something like that. And he talks about being outer directed to the second and third person, meaning our thoughts or experiences we have with the five senses, when what we need to be focused on is the first person, which is the self. And everything I've studied, when I think back about it, has been leading me in that direction, even though I'm not there yet and still have a lot of work to go. But it's hopeful. It's like light at the end of the tunnel, and I know if I ever reach that light, there'll be another light further down the road. But Ramana Maharshi's teachings it's kind of like it brings it all home to me, that it doesn't matter really what we believe or what we've been involved in. All of that is superfluous to the inner experience of the self.
And are you aware of people in your life on your pursuits who might be there already? Are you there already?
I'm not there already. But I know people, and I guess I would judge is the right word. I guess I would judge them by, because let me just preface this with saying, to me, when we become fully aware of the self, of the soul, whatever you want to call it, we want to serve in some capacity, because it's the nature of the self to want to serve. So I know people that service is their primary objective in life. I mean, they may be like a Mother Teresa, or they might be someone who's not interested in religion or the spiritual path at all, but service is what they do. That's who they are. And so I look at people not so much by what they say, I guess, but by their acts of service, their acts of altruistic service that they are living their life by. And that's how I would recognize people like that, I guess. So.
And I've been taught to see the same thing in other people too, by Sai Baba. You reach your own sense of self-divinity understanding through service, through devotion, through knowledge, through the direct path of self-inquiry. Let's call it that. That's what Ramana's phrase is for Ramana Maharshi's. And so the pathway to get there, there are many of them, but I'm starting to see people who seem to be already there as powerful examples of what the world can become one day.
Oh yeah, and I mentioned earlier, like British author Benjamin Grimm. I think he was probably pretty far along the path. Ramana Maharshi. Of course, I don't know him in the body, but I feel like I know him somewhat in spirit, as well as Sai Baba. I mean, these are people I look up to and hope to emulate in some way. I mean, to me, when we become self-realized, I mean, let me say this, Ramana Maharshi, he would say, why worry about the world? The world, God created the world, he'll take care of the world. Somebody had asked him one time about what kind of service should I do, or should I do service? And that was his response. But to me, you can't help yourself once you become self-realized. You want to make life better in some way for others. And that's the mark to me of someone who's highly evolved, if you will, if I could use that term, or enlightened.
McNair, I want to conclude by saying I've gleaned so much from, I think, the truth of who you've become and how you started in your life. And I'm extraordinarily grateful on short notice that you consented to this interview today. And thank you for that.
Thank you, Ted. It's been a pleasure. I look forward to seeing more of your work on Souljourns. It's a great service you're providing. Thank you for doing that, you and Jody.
And I look forward to seeing more of your own spiritual evolution down the path. So I might be rapping on your door again one day, maybe even to find out what's going on with your wife, Deb. In the same.
Yeah. I should say, incidentally, that Sai Baba listens to her a lot more than he listens to me, because she's always getting her questions answered by
I relate to that.
But she's a much nicer person than I am, so I can understand why.
Yeah, I met her earlier. I can tell that.
Yeah.
Thanks. McNair Ezzard from Asheville, North Carolina. You went west to be in the mountains, and now you're east living in the mountains.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ted.